Chapter 669. After this, the Ice Blade Spirit Warrior managed to escape even further and rushed towards another battlefield. Not good, damn it. The other Sea of Soul Realm experts saw this scene and had no desire to continue fighting. They madly charged and then turned to run. However, there were also one or two people who were firmly held back by the great beasts and couldn't escape. They could only roar in anger. Ice Blade, don't come over. Someone roared, but the Ice Blade Spirit Warrior's face darkened as he continued to fly towards that person. Although these Sea of Soul Realm experts couldn't completely block the Flood Dragon, as long as they could block it for a short while, he would be able to escape. Ah, Ice Blade, you're despicable. That person cursed. However, the result was the same. When the Ice Blade Spirit Warrior rushed over, the Flood Dragon followed closely. That human expert was simply not the Flood Dragon's opponent and was killed in a few moves. Even his corpse was swallowed by the Flood Dragon. Go! The other Sea of Soul Realm warriors who had escaped didn't dare to stay in the air, and directly flew down to join the battle below. Ha ha ha, kill all these humans. Those Sea of Soul Realm great beasts also laughed wildly and rushed down to the battlefield below. The battlefield below was in chaos. The addition of Sea of Soul Realm experts turned the battlefield into a chaotic battle. Miserable screams rang out continuously as large numbers of martial artists were killed by Sea of Soul Realm great beasts. There were also large numbers of sea beasts killed by Sea of Soul Realm martial artists. Lu Ming also rushed down to the battlefield below. Run, run! This area was being ravaged by a huge octopus. This octopus was a Sea of Soul Realm great beast. The octopus body was like a small mountain. 8 tentacles fluttered in the air. On each tentacle, there were suction cups that had a powerful suction force. With a wave of its 8 tentacles, a large number of human martial artists were sucked in by the suction cups. Then, the suction cups opened like mouths, revealing fangs as they swallowed the human martial artists, chewing them up. Miserable screams rose and fell. Luo Xian. Lu Ming saw Luo Xian in the crowd. At this moment, she was crazily fleeing with a group of people. Behind them, a huge tentacle swept towards them. Help! The few people who ran to the back were directly sucked in by the suction cups of the tentacles, letting out shrill screams. What should we do? What to do? Am I going to die here? Luo Xian's face was pale, without a trace of blood. She knew that she was in danger today and might very well die here. Unfortunately, before her dream of making the Flame Trade Union grow stronger could be realized, she was going to die here. She was unwilling. But in the face of such a huge gap in strength, what was the use of being unwilling? A huge tentacle waved towards her. Unable to escape, she closed her eyes in despair. But in the next moment, she heard a loud boom. Then, she felt her waist tighten. She was hugged by a strong arm, and a blazing aura kept surging towards her. She opened her eyes in a panic and saw a mask. It was the Azura mask. It's him. Luo Xian's eyes lit up. She realized that she was being hugged by Lu Ming at the waist, and her body was tightly pressed against Lu Ming's strong body. Her heartbeat accelerated and her face heated up. Lu Ming did not care about this. His eyes were all on the huge octopus in front of him. So strong. This octopus beast should be at the second layer of the spiritual ocean tier. Lu Ming thought in his heart and retreated rapidly. Just now, he exchanged a blow with one of the octopus tentacles and was no match for it. The other party's strength was too strong. Help, help! Lu Ming, save me! A loud cry was heard. Lu Ming looked over, and a faint smile appeared on his lips. The one who cried for help was Qin Zhao. He fled frantically, and behind him, a huge octopus tentacle waved towards him. Lu Ming could not be bothered with it and retreated rapidly. Lu Ming, you watched me die without saving me. I curse you to die without a complete corpse. Seeing that Lu Ming had no intention of saving him, Chen Zhao cursed loudly. Luo Xian's gaze was also very calm. Chen Zhao asked for all this. He offended Lu Ming like that earlier, so why would Lu Ming save him? The tentacles sucked and sucked Chen Zhao in. Chen Zhao screamed in horror and struggled desperately, but it was no use. The sucker opened and swallowed Chen Zhao. Shwa! Lu Ming retreated dozens of miles in an instant before letting go of Luo Xian. Miss Luo Xian, your cultivation is not high. Just stay behind. As soon as Lu Ming finished his words, his figure moved and he dashed in another direction. There, Xian Yanqing was fighting a huge eel. This eel was also one of the spirit sea great beasts. Its whole body was covered in lightning, and it was extremely powerful. Its cultivation should be at the middle first layer of the spirit sea realm. However, Xian Yanqing's battle strength was also extremely powerful, and he actually had a slight advantage. Lu Ming stepped on the air and arrived at this area in a short while. A bright spear light shot towards the eel. It's you! The eel saw Lu Ming and was shocked, and it hurriedly retreated. It had seen Lu Ming kill a deep-sea giant snake just now. It already felt that it was no match for Xian Yanqing. If Lu Ming joined the fray, it would be doomed. It would be strange if it did not run away. Roar! In the sky, dragon roars sounded out. After killing 2 spirit sea realm experts, the flood dragon continued to chase after Frostblade spirit warrior. Old man, I'll kill you today. You can't escape. The flood dragon roared, and its voice shook heaven and earth. Frostblade spirit warrior ran for his life, and he actually flew towards the battlefield below. Run! The martial artists below were scared out of their wits, and they all scattered to escape. This old man is too despicable. Lu Ming's eyes flashed with a cold light. He and Xian Yanqing flew back together. Xiao! Right at this moment, in the distant sky, a scarlet sword light pierced through the void and shot towards the flood dragon. The flood dragon caught it with its claw, and it clashed with the sword light. With a loud sound, the sword light disappeared, but the flood dragon's body was also blocked. Seeing this sword light, Frostblade spirit warrior was overjoyed, and he laughed loudly, Red old man, you're finally here. Too slow. Xiao! Another scarlet sword light slashed towards the flood dragon. Along with the appearance of the sword light, 6 or 7 figures appeared in the distance. The one in the lead was an old man in a red robe, and his aura was extremely powerful. Pang! A divine light shot out from one of the flood dragon's horns, blocking the sword light. Shwa! Shwa! With a series of sonic booms, 7 figures appeared in the sky above the battlefield. 7 silhouettes, each of them emitting a powerful aura. They were all powerful Sea of Souls realm warriors. Cold Blade old monster, I went to ask Green Xian for help. That's why I'm a bit late. The old man in red robe grinned. Green Xian is also here. Chapter 670. Of course. Let's go. Old monster Hong Chi yelled. Beside him, 5 of the Sea of Souls realm warriors flew down to the battlefield, while he and old monster Lu Xian flew toward the flood dragon. Together with the Ice Blade spirit warrior, they surrounded the flood dragon. Old monster Hong Chi and old monster Lu Xian's cultivation were the same as the Ice Blade spirit warriors, peak 3rd level Sea of Souls realm. A flood dragon. Its entire body is full of treasures. Let's kill it and divide it among the 3 of us. Greed flashed through old monster Hong Chi's eyes. Alright. Let's go. The Ice Blade spirit warrior yelled. Boom. 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 3 horrifying auras shot up into the sky. At the same time, 2 sword lights and a green bead attacked the flood dragon. The flood dragon roared and charged forward. Huh. Our reinforcements have arrived. Kill. Kill these bastards. A lot of human warriors yelled. This time, 7 Sea of Souls realm warriors had arrived. Two of them were dealing with the flood dragon while the other 5 joined the battlefield, turning the situation around instantly. In terms of high-end battle power, the human race had completely taken the upper hand. Not only were all the Sea of Souls realm beasts blocked, but the human side also had extra Sea of Souls realm warriors who were constantly killing the sea beasts. On the ocean, countless corpses floated. There were both human and beast corpses. So much essence blood. During this time, Lu Ming had devoured a lot of essence blood. Most of it was from Peak King warriors. After the battle started, Lu Ming had already devoured more than 50 of them. He could feel that his 9-dragon bloodline was almost full, and he really wanted to find a place to refine it. But right now, he could only slowly refine it while fighting. Up until now, the human race had suffered countless casualties. But they still had the upper hand. With the addition of Sea of Souls realm warriors, they were able to kill a lot of sea beasts. Retreat! Retreat! Finally, the sea beasts were scared. A Sea of Souls realm beast yelled and gathered all the sea beasts to retreat into the ocean. In terms of high-end battle power, the human race had already taken the upper hand. If they continued to fight, the sea beasts would be wiped out sooner or later. Lord Flood Dragon, this is all we can help you with. A huge octopus opened its mouth and gathered all the sea beasts to retreat into the ocean. Clank! Waves swept out, and the seawater became 1,000-meter-tall waves. Countless aquatic beasts hid within the waves and disappeared without a trace. Once a sea beast entered the sea and focused on escaping, it would be very difficult for martial artists to chase after it. Roar! In the sky, the flood dragon roared continuously. It was besieged by 3 experts at the peak of the 3rd layer of the spiritual ocean realm, and was completely at a disadvantage. In just a short while, a few wounds appeared on the flood dragon's body. Its scales were torn and blood flowed out. Kill this flood dragon! Some martial artists roared. However, even though the flood dragon was clearly no match for him, he still refused to retreat. Blue divine light burst out of the flood dragon's body, attacking Frostblade and the other 2. At the same time, the flood dragon's body kept shrinking. After a few breaths, a middle-aged man wearing blue armor appeared in the sky. He held a halberd in his hand. With a wave of his halberd, he forced the Ice Blade Spirit Cultivator back. The armored man was none other than the flood dragon. Whoosh! The flood dragon forced Frostsaber Spirit Master to retreat, then turned into a beam of light and shot toward the depths of Jinsha Island. Chase! The Ice Blade Spirit Cultivator, Old Monster Hong Qi, and Old Monster Lu Xian all chased after the flood dragon and disappeared into the sky. At this time, countless sea beasts had already retreated into the sea and escaped. Countless corpses were left on the surface of the sea. Ah, that tiger shark is mine. That's mine. Countless martial artists flew on the surface of the sea, putting the sea beast corpses into their storage rings. Many parts of these sea beasts were precious materials that could be used to refine weapons, pills, and so on. They were very valuable. Of course, these martial artists were tempted. Go away. That's mine. Some people roared, and a great battle even broke out. Lu Ming's figure flashed, and he appeared in front of a giant deep-sea snake. Go away. A Peak King didn't even look and directly slashed at Lu Ming. However, when he saw Lu Ming's appearance, he almost peed himself and hurriedly withdrew his blade. Shura! He screamed. Do you want to die? Lu Ming said coldly. No, it's a misunderstanding, a misunderstanding. This giant deep-sea snake is yours. That Peak King laughed shakily and hurriedly turned to leave. Kid, go away. You can take the corpse of a Sea of Soul realm beast even if you don't die. A man in his 30s with a tall nose flew over. This was a Spirit Sea realm expert. He was part of the group of experts who had rushed over to help. He did not see Lu Ming killing the Spirit Sea realm big demon and merely thought that Lu Ming was an ordinary Peak King. Before he arrived, a powerful aura pressed down on Lu Ming. Lu Ming frowned and appeared on top of the giant deep-sea snake. He placed his hand on the snake's wound and sucked, devouring the 9 drops of essence blood. Then, his figure flashed and he left this place. His goal was the essence blood of the giant deep-sea snake. As for the corpse, although it was precious, he didn't care much for it. Moreover, he needed to refine the essence blood and didn't want to have a conflict with others. Seeing that Lu Ming did not touch the deep-sea giant snake, the burly man with a high nose swept a cold glance at Lu Ming. He then waved his hand and put the deep-sea giant snake's huge body into his storage ring. Boom! Boom! The essence blood of a Sea of Soul realm beast was too terrifying. Once it entered the 9 dragons' bloodline, it was like a volcano erupting, constantly attacking the 9 dragons' bloodline and making rumbling sounds. He had wanted to devour more essence blood, but it seemed impossible now. Little Qing, let's go. I need you to guard me. Lu Ming called out. He needed to find a place to refine the essence blood. Xian Yanqing nodded and flew toward the city with Lu Ming. Boom! But at this moment, an earth-shattering sound came from the depths of Jinsha Island. Then, everyone saw a beam of 7-colored divine light shoot up into the sky. Although they were far away, they could still feel the extraordinary majesty of the divine light. Rumble! The entire Jinsha Island began to tremble slightly. Boom! The rainbow-colored divine light became even more resplendent. It dispersed the clouds and soared to an unknown height in the sky. What's going on? What's that 7-colored light beam? Is it related to that flood dragon? Is it possible? This beast tide is very abnormal. I suspect that it was organized by that flood dragon. It must have a purpose. The warriors present looked at the 7-colored divine light in a daze. Some people whispered. Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing were also shocked. They stood in the void and watched. The 7-colored divine light became more and more dazzling. The light completely outshone the sun in the sky. Suddenly, after a violent rumble, the 7-colored divine light disappeared. However, an island appeared where the 7-colored divine light was. Chapter 671. A floating island was emitting a resplendent 7-colored radiance. It was dazzling and radiant as it floated in the air. Roar! A dragon's roar resounded before silence ensued. It was obvious that the dragon's roar had come from the flood dragon. 7-colored island? Could that be the legendary 7-colored island? A white-haired old man suddenly exclaimed. What? 7-colored island? You mean 7-colored Taoist 7-colored island? Someone's eyes widened in disbelief. That's right, it's extremely similar to 7-colored Taoist 7-colored island. Heavens, it can't be true, right? 7-colored Taoist was a legendary 7th-grade true inscription master. Moreover, he was a peerless expert in the spirit embryo realm. Legend has it that when he died 800 years ago, his 7-colored island disappeared without a trace. If this really is 7-colored Taoist 7-colored island, then how many treasures would there be? The scene was in an uproar as countless people's eyes revealed a blazing light. Only when one's cultivation reached the spirit embryo realm could one be called a Taoist. Normally, Sea of Souls realm warriors were called spirit cultivators, just like Ice Blade spirit cultivators, but they were rarely used. Spirit embryo realm cultivators were called Taoists. Spirit god realm cultivators were called venerables. 7-colored Taoist was a spirit embryo realm expert. However, this wasn't his most famous point. His most famous point was that he was a 7th-grade true inscription master. This was a terrifying identity. True inscription masters were extremely rare. Whether it was their identity or status, they were no small matter. A 7th-grade true inscription master's status was comparable to a peerless expert in the spirit god realm. Back then, 7-colored Taoist had practically dominated the chaotic astral ocean. Even some super-large regions knew his name. 7-colored Taoist's most famous treasure was 7-colored island. It was an island and also a plain. Moreover, it was a treasure that could enter the void and wander there. After Seven-Colored Daoist's death, everyone thought that Seven-Colored Island had entered the void and would never appear again. But now, it had appeared. Whoosh! Whoosh! The Sea of Soul Realm experts present were the first to react. They transformed into streaks of rainbow light and flew towards Seven-Colored Island. Seven-Colored Island. It's definitely Seven-Colored Island. Let's go. Countless martial artists transformed into streaks of light and flew towards Seven-Colored Island. The figures on the shore instantly disappeared. Looks like a treasure has appeared. Lu Ming muttered. He had never heard of the Seven-Colored Spiritual Master's name before, but seeing how excited he was, he knew that he was extraordinary. But now, refining the essence blood was more important. As for the treasures, he could only wait. Let's return to the city first. Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing flew back to the city. They randomly found a room and rushed in. Xian Yanqing stood guard outside the room for Lu Ming. With a thought, Lu Ming appeared in the Temple of Paragon. He sat down cross-legged and started to refine the essence blood. The essence blood of more than 50 Peak King warriors and the essence blood of a Sea of Souls realm deep-sea snake, the power of this essence blood was too powerful. Lu Ming began refining with all his might. Everyone's essence blood surged toward the second bloodline. The second bloodline appeared above Lu Ming's head. It had 8 silver chakras. 7 of them were extremely bright, while the 8th was slightly dimmer. Clouds swirled around the stone tablet, but at the very front, the clouds were very faint. One could clearly see 2 words, suppress, and tablet. There was another word in the middle, but it was blocked and could not be seen clearly. At this moment, as Lu Ming continued to refine the essence blood surged into the second bloodline. The 8th chakra of the second bloodline also became brighter. 2 hours later, the 8th chakra was as bright as the other chakras. Lu Ming continued to refine the essence blood. 10,000 miles away from the city, a bright sphere floated in the air. This sphere was about 100 miles in diameter. This was Seven-Colored Island. It was completely enveloped by a layer of circular light, and the situation inside couldn't be seen clearly. Outside the sphere, there were more than 100,000 martial artists surrounding it. The Seven-Colored Island is protected by the inscription battle. Only Peak Kings can break through the light screen and rush in. We can't enter at all. Damn it! There's a treasure mountain in front of us, but we can only stare at it. What bad luck! There's nothing we can do. Who told us to be so weak? Even Peak Kings and Sea of Soul Realm experts have rushed in. Someone else is coming. A beam of light streaked through the void and appeared at the edge of the Seven-Colored Island. It was a red-robed man. If Lu Ming were here, he would definitely recognize this red-robed man as the Cloud Sea Pill Institution's old ancestor. He didn't appear in the previous battle, but he appeared now. That battle actually drew out the Seven-Colored Island. Such an opportunity can't be missed. The Cloud Sea Pill Institution's old ancestor chuckled and waved his palm, breaking through the light screen. His figure flashed and rushed in. Then, the light screen closed. Who is that person? He didn't appear in the previous battle, but appeared when he saw the treasure. How shameless! Someone snorted unhappily. I don't know. He's probably a new expert. Someone shook his head. Time flew by, and soon, more than 10 hours had passed. Lu Ming had been refining the essence blood. He had already refined more than half of the essence blood that had been devoured. On his second bloodline, 8 silver chakras shone brightly. In the blink of an eye, another 2 hours had passed. Buzz! Suddenly, another silver chakra appeared on top of the 8 chakras. The 9th chakra. 9th grade King Realm. Lu Ming's second bloodline had advanced to the 9th grade King Realm, becoming the highest grade of King Realm bloodline. The next step would be the Divine Bloodline. However, it would be too difficult for the 9th grade King Realm bloodline to reach the Divine Bloodline. Lu Ming wasn't confident. Buzz! When the second bloodline advanced to the 9th grade king realm, the steel trembled slightly. The mist surrounding the steel slowly faded, and the word in the middle became clearer. Finally, it could be seen clearly. Prison. The word in the middle meant prison. Suppressing prison steel. Just as Lu Ming could see the 3 words, they suddenly shone brightly. Lu Ming felt as if he had come to an endless land. The land was desolate, and there were no stars, flowers, trees, or any living things. It was dead silent. On the dead land, a steel stood tall. The steel was extremely tall, and it pierced through the sky. On the steel, Lu Ming saw 3 words, suppressing prison steel. Boom! Lu Ming suddenly felt an explosion in his mind. A message rushed into his mind. At this moment, the scene changed. Lu Ming was still in the Temple of Paragon, and the word suppressing hell monument on the stone tablet dimmed and no longer glowed. It seemed like nothing had happened, but Lu Ming realized that there was indeed a message in his mind. Suppressing prison heaven skill. A martial skill appeared in his mind. It was related to the suppressing prison steel. Is this a bloodline martial skill? Chapter 672. He had always envied others for being able to comprehend their own bloodline martial techniques. He did not expect a martial technique to appear in his mind as soon as his suppressing prison steel bloodline was promoted to 9th level king class. However, now was not the time to comprehend martial techniques. There was still a part of the blood essence in the 9-dragon bloodline that had not been refined. The 9th chakra of the suppressing prison steel bloodline had appeared. Lu Ming was not in a hurry to upgrade the suppressing prison steel bloodline. Instead, he gave the rest of the blood essence to the 9-dragon bloodline. It took him a day to refine everyone's blood essence. However, the 9-dragon bloodline was not promoted to 9th level king class. It still did not have enough blood essence. Phew! Lu Ming exhaled. He got up and walked out of the Temple of Paragon and out of the room. Lu Ming, you are too slow. It has been a day. I can feel a strong spiritual herb aura from the Rainbow Island. There must be a large amount of spiritual herbs on the Rainbow Island. If you don't go now, it will all be taken by others. As soon as Lu Ming walked out of the room, Dandan, who was lying on Xian Yanqing's shoulder, shouted. A large amount of spiritual herbs. Lu Ming's eyes lit up. There were many places where he could use spiritual herbs. He would not let go of them. There is no doubt about it. There must be a lot of spiritual herbs. Dandan jumped onto Lu Ming's shoulder and its eyes lit up. Let's go now. Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing flew into the air and flew towards the Rainbow Island. They soon arrived at the Rainbow Island. There were fewer people around the Rainbow Island now. Many martial artists left when they saw that they could not enter the island. However, there were still a few who stayed, hoping for a miracle. Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing's arrival did not attract much attention. Now that they had returned to their original appearances and had taken off their masks, no one knew that they were the famous Azura and Yiksha. The island, which was more than 100 miles in diameter, was suspended in the air. It was shrouded in a bright light. Brother, why aren't you going in? Lu Ming pulled a young man aside and asked curiously. Did you just come from outside? This place is protected by the inscription array. At the very least, one would need the battle prowess of a peak king to break through this light screen and enter. The young man casually glanced at Lu Ming and did not pay much attention to him. Lu Ming looked 5 or 6 years younger than him. He didn't think that Lu Ming could break in. Oh, so that means those peak king level martial artists and above have all entered? However, this Rainbow Island only had a diameter of about 100 miles. With so many experts entering, wouldn't they have already dug 3 feet into the ground? It's already been a day, why haven't they come out yet? Lu Ming was a little curious. This was also something that he was curious about. I don't know either. If you have the ability, go in and take a look yourself. The young man looked at Lu Ming with a mocking expression. However, Lu Ming nodded and said, "Yes, I can only go in and take a look." Then, Lu Ming casually threw a punch, and the light screen was broken. Lu Ming took a step forward and walked in. Xian Yanqing stretched out her slender hand and pressed down. The light screen was also broken, and Xian Yanqing's figure disappeared. The young man was dumbfounded and stood there in a daze. Heaven and earth spun. Lu Ming discovered that he was in the air and was falling rapidly. He hurriedly circulated his true essence and hovered in the air. Xian Yanqing appeared not far away from him. Lu Ming stood in the air and looked into the distance in a daze. The world was vast, and there were mountains and dangerous peaks. Lu Ming looked over and could see at least a few hundred miles. There was no end to the world. It was more than 100 miles. It was simply boundless. Lu Ming, this rainbow island looks like it's only 100 miles from the outside, but there's another world inside. I reckon that it's a small plain with a very large area. Xian Yanqing said. Lu Ming nodded. This rainbow island was really strange. Moreover, the mountains here were also very strange. They were divided into different colors with distinct layers. Some of the mountain peaks were filled with fiery red plants. Some of the mountain peaks were filled with golden plants. Some of them were blue, and some of them were purple. There were a total of 7 colors. No wonder it was called the Rainbow Island. Moreover, the spiritual chi of heaven and earth here was extremely rich. There are spiritual herbs. I can smell the scent of spiritual herbs. Dandan lifted its 2 short legs and ran forward. Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing followed. Dandan stopped on a mountain peak. The mountain peak was full of potholes and there were still remnants of medicinal fragrance. Obviously, there were indeed spiritual herbs, but they had been dug up. They came to a few nearby mountains and there were traces of excavation everywhere. The Rainbow Spiritual Master was a 7th-level true inscription alchemist back then. He was probably an expert in alchemy, so it was normal for him to grow many spiritual herbs. Look, I told you we were late. All the spiritual herbs have been dug up. Dandan said unhappily. Let's go. Stop muttering. This island is very big, and no one has left yet. It means that this island hasn't been completely excavated. If we rush over now, we'll be in a hurry. Lu Ming grabbed Dandan and placed it on his shoulder. He turned into a stream of light and rushed forward. Along the way, they didn't see anyone. Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing didn't stop and flew all the way. Soon, the two of them flew for a distance of 100,000 kilometers. They didn't know how many mountains and rivers they had passed. In the end, the two of them saw people, but they were already corpses. It was obvious that there was a big battle over the spiritual herbs. Boom! Suddenly, the sound of a big battle came from ahead. Then, they saw a few streams of light flying towards a mountain range. Let's go. There's a 6th-level spiritual herb in the valley ahead. The 3 of us will work together and snatch the spiritual herb. We'll split it equally. The 3 figures disappeared in the blink of an eye. In the mountain range ahead, the rumbling sounds became more and more intense. A 6th-level spiritual herb. Kill it. Lu Ming, charge. Dandan's eyes lit up when it heard that there was a 6th-level spiritual herb. It kept waving its little claws. Lu Ming's eyes also lit up. A 6th-level spiritual herb was rare. He flew forward with Xian Yanqing. In front of them, there was a huge canyon in the mountains. Inside, there were flashes of light constantly. There were also violent rumbling sounds and angry roars. The two of them rushed in without hesitation. There were more than 10 people fighting, and they were all peak-tier kings. On a cliff in the canyon, there were 3 purple spiritual herbs. Purple grass, a 6th-level spiritual herb. After consuming it, it could purify one's true yuan and strengthen one's cultivation. More than 10 peak-tier kings were fighting in a chaotic battle. Lu Ming stepped out and walked towards the purple grass. Kid, get out of my way. The purple grass is mine. A brawny man's eyes flickered with a ferocious light as he clawed at Lu Ming. You're the one getting out. Lu Ming threw a punch with the back of his hand. A burst of fist aura blasted out. The burly man's claws made cracking sounds and his bones broke. He screamed and his body flew out like a cannonball. He crashed heavily into the stone wall on one side of the canyon, directly smashing a huge deep hole in the wall. The brawny man was trapped in the deep hole. He was already breathing out more than he was breathing in. Chapter 673. They were well aware of the strength of that burly man. In the previous battle, that burly man was vaguely the strongest among them. However, Lu Ming had beaten him half to death with a casual punch. Lu Ming's battle strength was too terrifying. Shura, he's Shura. I've seen that kind of fist technique before. Suddenly, an old man exclaimed and looked at Lu Ming with fear. What? Shura, it's him. It should be him. With such battle strength at such a young age, it's very likely that he's Shura. He's just taken off his mask. The other Peak Kings exclaimed and looked at Lu Ming in shock. If he was really Shura, they knew that they could forget about getting this spiritual herb. Shura had killed a deep-sea serpent by himself in the previous battle with the sea beasts. His battle strength was terrifying to the extreme. It wouldn't take much effort for him to kill them. I'll take this Ziying grass. Lu Ming glanced at these people and said calmly. It's alright, it's alright. Since little brother has taken a fancy to it, you can have it. The old man said with a face full of smiles. Lu Ming's face was calm as he strode toward the Ziying grass. Whoosh! Just as Lu Ming was about to approach the Ziying grass, a blade light cut through the void and slashed toward Lu Ming. Lu Ming frowned and quickly retreated, dodging the blade light. A burly man in his 30s walked over step by step in the air with his hands behind his back. His body emitted an aura that was as deep as the sea. Sea of Soul Realm, this was a Sea of Soul Realm martial artist. It's him. Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat. Lu Ming recognized this burly man. This burly man was one of the experts who had rushed over to help. The corpse of the deep-sea serpent that Lu Ming had killed was also taken away by this person. Do you think a mere martial king like you can get your hands on a grade 6 spiritual herb? You must be dreaming. The burly man stood in the air with his hands behind his back, looking down at Lu Ming and the others with a superior appearance. The faces of the dozen or so Peak Kings turned unsightly. Since Senior has taken a fancy to it, we naturally wouldn't dare to compete with Senior. We'll take our leave now. The old man cupped his fists respectfully before turning around to leave. Whoosh! The burly man waved his hand, and a blade light slashed towards the old man. The old man's expression changed greatly, and he hurriedly dodged to the side, narrowly avoiding the saber light. Of course, this was also because the burly man had held back. Otherwise, with the old man's cultivation, he definitely would not have been able to avoid it. Senior, what do you mean by this? The old man's expression was extremely ugly. Although he looked older than the burly man, in the world of martial arts, the strong were respected. Therefore, age was not the only thing that mattered. Besides, the other party was a spirit sea realm cultivator. Who knew how old he was on the surface? What do you mean? Hand over your storage rings. Like I said, level 6 spiritual herbs are not something you can take. The muscular man's indifferent voice rang out. What? You want us to hand over our storage rings? The expressions of the more than 10 peak-tier kings changed dramatically. They weren't fools. If they handed over their storage rings, how could they take them back? What? You're not going to hand it over? If you don't hand them over, then you can stay here forever. The burly man's expression darkened, and a wisp of killing intent flashed in his eyes. The expressions of the peak-tier kings changed drastically, and they were incomparably ugly. The storage rings contained all their belongings. If they handed it over, how could they cultivate in the future? Involuntarily, a few of them looked at Lu Ming. Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing's expressions were calm from the beginning to the end. The burly man shifted his gaze to Lu Ming, then to Xian Yanqing, and a trace of evil fire flashed in his eyes. "Kid, you're very calm. Let's start with you. Hurry up and hand over your storage rings." The burly man shouted. "Scram!" Lu Ming only replied with one word. The burly man was stunned, and he stared blankly at Lu Ming. He suspected that he had misheard. Lu Ming actually told him to scram. A martial king ant actually told him to scram. He simply thought that he was hallucinating. "Kid, what did you say? What did you just say?" The burly man couldn't help but ask twice. "I'll give you 3 breaths of time to scram. If you don't scram, you can stay here forever," Lu Ming said indifferently. "Ha ha ha, kid, little bastard, you told me to scram? Are you crazy?" The burly man laughed crazily, as if he had never encountered such a funny thing in his life. 3. Lu Ming coldly started counting. "You're courting death, you know. But, I'll make you beg for death." The burly man's body emitted an intense killing intent. 2. Lu Ming continued. The burly man's face turned completely gloomy. He realized that Lu Ming didn't seem to be joking at all, but was serious. But, a 20-year-old kid, a peak martial king, how could he tell a Sea of Soul realm expert to scram? Where did his confidence come from? The other peak-tier kings were also dumbfounded. Even if they guessed that Lu Ming might be an Azura, seeing a peak-tier king threaten a Sea of Soul realm expert like this with their own eyes was simply like a dream. 1. Lu Ming counted to 1. With a flicker, Xian Yanqing's figure appeared behind the burly man, blocking his path of retreat with Lu Ming in front and behind. "2 little bastards, I'd like to see what kind of ability you have to be so arrogant in front of me. Today, I'll make you suffer a life and death dilemma." The burly man's face revealed a sinister expression, and his killing intent became even denser. "Nonsense." Lu Ming's eyes flashed, and he suddenly punched out. This punch almost pierced through space, emitting a deafening rumble. The burly man's face suddenly changed. He realized that this punch could pose a threat to him. A battle blade appeared in his hand. Just as he was about to slash out and scatter Lu Ming's fist light, his body suddenly sank, as if a 10,000-meter-tall mountain was pressing down on him. He almost fell to the ground. Behind him, Xian Yanqing lightly pressed down with one hand, displaying the Sky Demon force field. Damn it! The burly man discovered that his body was as heavy as a mountain. Not only had his movements slowed down, even the circulation of Jin Yuan in his body had slowed down. It was as if every muscle in his body was pressing down on a mountain. Exploding Star Fist. Bang! Bang! In an instant, Lu Ming punched out hundreds of times. Hundreds of frightening fist lights bombarded the burly man. That aura was too frightening. Destruction cut. Xian Yanqing whispered, and the destructive power suddenly erupted. The burly man's body violently shook, and the destructive power almost cut him in two. However, Lu Ming's exploding star fist had already arrived. "No, no, spare me." At this moment, the burly man was scared. He was really scared. With his cultivation in the middle stage of the first layer of the spiritual sea realm, under the joint attack of Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing, it was almost impossible for him to resist. He felt that death was approaching. However, before he could finish his words, he was drowned by hundreds of fist auras. Again. Lu Ming punched out hundreds of times, and then another hundreds of times, and hundreds of fist lights bombarded the burly man. Chapter 674. The other peak-tier kings stared at the area with their eyes wide open. Soon, the light completely dissipated. There was nothing there. No, to be precise, there was only a blood mist floating in the air and a storage ring. Hiss, the peak-tier kings sucked in cold breaths. Dead. An almighty at the middle stage of the first level of the spiritual sea realm died just like that. Under the joint efforts of Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing, not even his corpse was left behind. They already knew that the Azura and Yiksha were both very strong. However, after seeing this scene, the dozen or so Peak Kings were still shocked to the extreme. Too strong. Peak Tier Kings were actually this strong? The two joined hands and complemented each other. It was not as simple as 1 + 1 = 2. Lu Ming reached out and sucked the storage ring into his hand. However, he was still somewhat depressed. The attack just now was too fierce. The blood essence of the man was directly annihilated, not leaving anything behind. Lu Ming lamented in his heart. This was the blood essence of a Sea of Soul realm expert. After Lu Ming refined it, his 9 dragons bloodline would probably rise to the 9th grade of King Realm. Lu Ming inwardly warned himself to not attack so fiercely in the future. You can leave. Immediately, Lu Ming glanced at the Peak Tier Kings. All right. Many thanks, young master. Many thanks, young lady. The dozen or so Peak Kings hurriedly nodded and bowed to express their gratitude before leaving. If not for Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing, their belongings would definitely be gone. After the Peak Tier Kings left, Lu Ming dug out the 3 stalks of ziying grass. Little Qing, how about we divide the things we get from this 7-colored island? Lu Ming waved the storage ring of the man and said. I'm fine with anything. Xian Yanqing said. Anything? How come you're so easy to talk to now? You were very clear with me before. Could it be? Lu Ming pretended to be surprised. He stroked his chin and carefully looked at Xian Yanqing. What are you looking at? Pervert, what are you thinking? Xian Yanqing blushed and glared fiercely at Lu Ming. I get it. We're a family, there's no need to be so calculative. Lu Ming chuckled. Who is your family? Dream on. No, that guy's storage ring belongs to me. Xian Yanqing's eyes widened, and he sucked in his true essence, sucking the storage ring from Lu Ming's hand. No way, I also contributed, I have a share too. Lu Ming wailed. Who asked you to offend me? Serves him right. Xian Yanqing glared fiercely at Lu Ming again. Then, he turned around with a smile in his eyes. Lu Ming was speechless. This was the storage ring of a Sea of Soul realm expert. It was gone just like that. Lu Ming's heart ached so much that he wanted to die. He hurriedly put away the 3 stalks of ziying grass. Otherwise, they would fall into Xian Yanqing's evil hands again. Hey, you guys split up. What about me? Don't forget about me. Dandan shouted. Go away. Lu Ming glanced at Dandan unhappily. Kid, what's with your attitude? I'm not done with you. Give me the spiritual herbs. If you don't give it to me, I'll bite you. As Dandan bared its fangs, the 2 men and 1 turtle left the canyon and continued to advance towards the depths of the Rainbow Island. From here on, they could occasionally meet other martial artists, and the spiritual herbs slowly increased. The Rainbow Taoist was using the Rainbow Island as a medicinal field. There were spiritual herbs everywhere. The Rainbow Taoist had fallen for 800 years, and the Rainbow Island had also disappeared for 800 years. Naturally, there were a lot of spiritual herbs here. Spiritual herbs could be seen on every mountain peak. Most of them were 4th grade, 5th grade, and even 6th grade ones could be seen occasionally. 6th grade spiritual herbs were very useful even for Sea of Soul realm experts. How precious were they? Naturally, it would lead to many fights and battles. However, with Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing's cultivation base, they were naturally unstoppable. No one was their match. Along the way, there were also some blind people who wanted to rob them. In the end, their essence blood fell into the 9 dragons' bloodline's mouth. After a day, the 2 had a bountiful harvest. They each obtained more than 300 stalks of 5th grade spiritual herbs and a dozen or so 6th grade spiritual herbs. Even Dandan had a bountiful harvest, putting them all into its mouth. Ah! Run! Suddenly, a few peak-tier kings flew out from a mountain peak in fright. Swish! Swish! Next, Lu Ming saw that mountain peak shine. Beams of sword chi shot out, killing the peak-tier kings in the air. Great inscription array. Lu Ming's gaze focused. On that mountain peak, Lu Ming saw the great inscription array operating. Kid, I can sense that there are great inscription arrays everywhere ahead. It's quite dangerous. Dandan looked ahead and said in a low voice. Lu Ming gazed ahead. The spirit fire in his sea of consciousness was throbbing. He also had the same feeling. He felt that there were great inscription arrays and killing intent everywhere ahead. I reckon we're almost at the core. Otherwise, how could there be such a great inscription array? Xian Yanqing said. Lu Ming nodded and said, let's go down. We'll be more careful. Next, the two slowed down a lot. They focused their minds and carefully sensed. Lu Ming's spirit fire was throbbing. His perception of great inscription arrays was very accurate. He wouldn't rashly step into places with great inscription arrays. Buzz! In a valley, a raging fire suddenly burned. A few martial artists screamed and turned into ashes. The two walked for thousands of miles and saw 5 groups of people die under the great inscription arrays. Dangers were accompanied by opportunities. Here, there were more spiritual herbs than other places, especially the 6th grade spiritual herbs. The proportion was very high. Suddenly, Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing stopped and looked ahead. In front of them, a large mountain range had collapsed. The ground was full of potholes and pits. Obviously, there had been a great battle here. The area within 100 miles was a mess. To be able to leave such traces, their battle strength must be terrifying. Was it caused by the dragon and several experts in the 3rd layer of the spiritual sea realm? Lu Ming thought. The two patrolled the sky above this land. There's a corpse over there. No, it's half a corpse. Xian Yanqing looked down. The two of them landed on the ground, and indeed, they saw half a corpse. Only the lower half was left, and the upper half was missing. It's that old monster Lu Xian. Lu Ming's eyes focused. It seems that this is really the battlefield of the dragon and several old monsters. Xian Yanqing said in a low voice. Old monster Lu Xian, Han Dao, and old monster Hong Qi chased the dragon together. They must have chased in and fought. However, it seemed that old monster Lu Xian had died in the battle. Only half a corpse was left. They may have gone ahead. The dragon led the army of sea beasts to attack the Golden Sand Island. It's probably for the colorful island. What does the dragon want? Why did it rush here without caring about its own safety? Lu Ming frowned and guessed. Lu Ming, look, there seems to be a palace in front of us. Xian Yanqing suddenly pointed ahead. Chapter 675. Could that be the place where 7-colored spiritual master cultivates in seclusion? Lu Ming's eyes suddenly lit up. 7-colored spiritual master was a strong practitioner of the spirit embryo realm and a 7th-level true inscription master. How terrifying was he? How many treasures would there be in his seclusion? Lu Ming's heart palpitated with eagerness. Let's go, kid, let's go. I can already feel the calling of the treasure. Let's go. Dandan cried out. Its eyes were wide open and sparkling with luster. Let's go. Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing didn't stop and continued forward. After a few hundred miles, their speed gradually slowed down. Although the palace was clearer from there were more and more inscription formations here, and they were more and more concentrated. If one wasn't careful, they would step into the inscription formations. Along the way, they saw quite a number of corpses. As they continued forward, it became even more dangerous. There were formations everywhere. Don't worry. With me here, what's an inscription formation carved by a mere 7th-level inscription master? Just you wait. Dandan jumped down from Lu Ming's shoulder and sprinted in the air with its two short legs. It looked left and right, sometimes deep in thought, sometimes looking at the landscape. After a while, Dandan flew back to Lu Ming's shoulder and said, "First, fly 3 miles to the right and land on that mound. Then, fly 5 miles forward and continue." Dandan began to give directions. "Hey, Dandan, is this reliable? This is a matter of life and death." Lu Ming looked at Dandan worriedly. "Nonsense, who am I? I am the head of the top 10 war beasts and have seen thousands of formations. What's this kind of formation? If I wasn't injured, this kind of childish plaything would be broken with a wave of my hand," Dandan said arrogantly. Lu Ming was speechless. He didn't really trust Dandan. This guy always dropped the ball at crucial moments. However, he was only a third-level inscription master, and the inscriptions he had mastered were only third-level inscriptions. His understanding of the inscription array was not enough. This was an array set up by a 7th-level inscription master, and he really could not see through it. We can only trust this guy now. Lu Ming gritted his teeth and followed Dandan's instructions with Xian Yanqing. They first flew 3 miles to the right and then 5 miles forward. Wang! More than 10 minutes later, inscriptions suddenly flashed on an ordinary-looking small mountain. A few resplendent sword lights condensed and slashed towards Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing. Nest, I misjudged. Run! Dandan yelled and ran away madly. She was faster than anyone else. Fuck, Lu Ming was cursing in his heart. He swept out his long spear and retreated quickly. Xian Yanqing also displayed the Sky Demon Force Field to block the sword lights. Puff! Xian Yanqing's Sky Demon Force Field was almost split in half in an instant. Be careful! Lu Ming shouted. The spear light surged and swept towards the 3 sword lights. At the same time, he pulled Xian Yanqing's little hand and retreated crazily. Bang! Bang! After a few roars, the spear light exploded. Lu Ming was blasted back several miles by a huge force before he could stand firm. Lu Ming felt the blood in his body surging. He almost vomited blood. His eyes were burning with anger. He looked at Dandan and gritted his teeth. Is this the level of your top 10 beasts? Do you want to kill us? Cough, cough. Lu Ming, calm down. Don't get too excited. I made a mistake and misjudged you. It won't happen again. I won't. Dandan also felt a little embarrassed and coughed a few times. Lu Ming was really speechless. This guy was really unreliable. But now, he could only rely on him. Lu Ming secretly swore in his heart that he must raise his inscription level as soon as possible. Otherwise, it would be too dangerous to rely on this guy. Dandan ran to the front again and observed carefully. After a while, he ran back and said confidently, "Don't worry, there will be no mistakes this time. Go ahead boldly." "I don't believe you." Lu Ming muttered in his heart. This time, he and Xian Yanqing were even more cautious. Boom! A small lake suddenly exploded, and the blade light violently slashed out. Nest! Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing turned around and ran. This time, they were much more careful. As soon as something was wrong, they turned around and ran. You old turtle, you're deliberately tricking me. Lu Ming was furious. Cough, cough. Young man, calm down. It's not good to be angry at such a young age. Look at that girl. How calm is she? Dandan said awkwardly. Lu Ming, I want to roast this little turtle. Xian Yanqing said coldly. Dandan's body trembled and ran forward. Let me observe again. This time, there won't be any mistakes. Just like that, they stumbled forward. The further they went, the closer they were to the palace. However, the number of inscription formations also increased. A few hundred miles ahead of Lu Ming and the others, there were 2 figures. One of them was the patriarch of the Cloud Sea Pill Institution, Yun Luo. The other was a middle-aged man who only had the cultivation of a peak-tier king. At this moment, the middle-aged man's face was pale. "Senior, it's too dangerous ahead. If you let me scout ahead, I'll only die." "Oh, if you don't scout ahead, you'll die now. Choose for yourself," Yun Luo said coldly. The middle-aged man's face became even paler. He originally had 3 companions, but they were captured by Yun Luo to scout ahead for him. His other 3 companions had died because they were scouting ahead. Now, it was his turn. "Why aren't you going forward? If you scout ahead, there's still a chance of survival. We'll reach the palace soon. Perhaps after passing through this section, there won't be any more danger. You might still live. If you don't move, I'll kill you now." Yun Luo's voice was cold. The middle-aged man's expression changed. In the end, he gritted his teeth and carefully flew forward. The formation here was very strange. Only by moving through the gaps could one be unharmed. Otherwise, even flying through the air might trigger the formation. Moreover, there was even a formation in the air. The methods of a 7th-grade true inscription refinement master were already unfathomable. The middle-aged man focused his mind and made several turns here and there. After traveling for more than 10 miles, he did not encounter any problems. Just as he let out a sigh of relief, inscriptions flashed in the air. A battle sword formed and split the middle-aged man in half. "Damn it, useless trash!" Yun Luo roared. Now that the last person to scout ahead for him was dead, how was he going to enter? Even if his cultivation was strong and he could directly charge through some of the formations, there were still some that could kill him. He didn't dare to take the risk. Just as he was hesitating, a few figures appeared behind him and headed in his direction. Yun Luo turned around. When he saw who it was, his eyes were filled with cold killing intent. It was Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing. When Yun Luo saw Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing, Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing naturally saw Yun Luo as well. "Yun Luo, it's you." Lu Ming was slightly taken aback. It was a little beyond his expectations. He didn't see Yun Luo when he was fighting the sea beasts, but now he saw Yun Luo here. Chapter 676. "Ha ha ha, you 2 little bastards, you came at the right time. Be obedient and lead the way for me." Yun Luo laughed loudly, his face ferocious. It was because of Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing that he was besieged by the 4 young experts and lost an arm. Originally, he was about to break through to the 2nd layer of the spiritual sea realm, but because of losing an arm, his vitality was greatly damaged. Not only was his cultivation hard to break through, but it was also declining. Now, his cultivation could barely maintain at the peak of the 1st layer of the spiritual sea realm. After losing an arm, his battle power had decreased a little. His hatred for Lu Ming and the others could not be washed away even by the Yellow River. "Lead the way for you." "Yun Luo, you are dreaming. Why don't you lead the way yourself?" Lu Ming glanced at the middle-aged man's body and sneered. Compared to the battle with Yun Luo, his and Xian Yanqing's battle power had greatly increased. Now, how could they be afraid of Yun Luo? But Yun Luo did not know that he was defeated because he was besieged by the 4 young experts. Now, there was only Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing. He was confident that he could suppress Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing. "You don't want to lead the way? If you don't, I will kill you right now," Yun Luo said coldly. "This is what I want to say to you. Last time, you ran away. This time, stay." Lu Ming's eyes were filled with murderous intent as he strode forward. Xian Yanqing and Lu Ming walked side by side toward Yun Luo. "You are looking for death." Yun Luo roared and waved his arm. 2 flame rings appeared, suppressing Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing. Boom! Lu Ming's long spear expanded, surrounded by the 3-colored conception. He threw out a spear, colliding with the 2 flame rings. With a boom, the 2 rings were blown back by Lu Ming. Yun Luo's expression changed greatly as he exclaimed, "How can you be so strong? Sky Demon Force Field, Destruction Slice, Kill. Xie Nianqing shouted. She pushed her jade-like hand forward, and a powerful heavenly demon force field enveloped Yun Luo. Destructive and cutting power crazily erupted. Not good. Yun Luo's expression changed again. She kept waving her hand and unleashing her full power. Rings of fire appeared one after another, blocking the cutting power coming from all directions. Explosions rang out incessantly as sparks flew in all directions. Whoosh! Whoosh! Lu Ming's long spear shook, and immediately dozens of spear lights shot towards Yun Luo. Under Xie Nianqing's intentional control, the heavenly demon force field had no effect on Lu Ming's attack. Bang! Bang! Under the joint attack of Xie Nianqing and Lu Ming, Yun Luo was completely at a disadvantage. How is that possible? How could this be? How could these two little bastards become so strong? Damn it! Yun Luo was horrified and tried his best to resist. However, his combat strength was not as good as before. He was no match for Lu Ming and Xie Nianqing at all. He was completely suppressed. After a while, 2 more wounds appeared on his body. They were caused by the destruction slice. If he hadn't dodged in time, he would have been cut in half. Go, go, I will die if this continues. Yun Luo frantically retreated, but he was shrouded by the heavenly demon force field, and his speed was much slower. No matter how much he retreated, Xie Nianqing would immediately move forward and surround him. Whoosh! His neck was slashed by the spear light and a bloody wound appeared. It almost pierced through his throat. Ah! He screamed. He was really afraid that he would die here. More and more wounds appeared on his body. Spare me, please spare me. I can give you 10 million supreme-grade spirit crystals. How about that? Yun Luo shouted. However, Lu Ming and Xie Nianqing's attacks became even more violent. 20 million, I will give you 20 million. Please spare me. Yun Luo shouted. Bang! Bang! What responded to him was Lu Ming's footwork. Lu Ming took large strides forward, getting closer and closer to Yun Luo. His attacks became more and more violent. As long as we kill you, your wealth will be ours. Why do we need you to give it to us? Lu Ming's voice was laced with sarcasm. Whoosh! As soon as his voice fell, Lu Ming turned into a spear light and shot out. Extreme Dao Strike. Puchi! The spear light pierced through Yun Luo's heart. Yun Luo roared, his voice full of unwillingness. If he knew that he would end up like this, he wouldn't have come to the Rainbow Island this time. The result of coming here was death. Bang! Lu Ming's long spear shook. Yun Luo was dead. He reached out and devoured Yun Luo's blood essence. As soon as Yun Luo's blood essence entered the 9 dragons' bloodline, there was a violent roar. The energy was too terrifying, and Lu Ming had to refine it immediately. Shao Qing, I will cultivate for a while. Guard me. Having said that, Lu Ming sat down with his legs crossed and focused on refining the blood essence. Xie Nianqing looked at Lu Ming curiously. She didn't understand why Lu Ming wanted to cultivate all of a sudden. It took him half a day to refine all of Yun Luo's blood essence. Roar! The 9 dragons' bloodline emerged and roared. Above the 8 dazzling chakras, a chakra suddenly emerged. The 9th silver chakra, a 9th grade king-class bloodline. Xie Nianqing's eyes widened and her mouth was slightly agape, revealing a look of disbelief. Bloodline upgrade. This guy can upgrade his bloodline. No wonder this guy is so abnormal. Every time I improve my strength, I can't surpass him. Xie Nianqing's beautiful eyes flickered. The light of the 9th chakra was dimmer than the other 8 chakras. This was because it had not reached its peak. After a while, the 9 dragons' bloodline disappeared into Lu Ming's body. Lu Ming opened his eyes. As soon as he opened his eyes, he saw a beautiful face in front of him. She was staring at him without blinking. She was only a few inches away from his face. Lu Ming could even feel Xian Yanqing's breathing. Lu Ming was shocked and said, "What are you doing? Are you trying to take advantage of me while I'm cultivating?" "Take advantage of you? You wish." Xian Yanqing curled her lips and then looked at Lu Ming curiously. She said, "Your bloodline can upgrade." "How wonderful." Lu Ming looked calm and was not surprised. When he was cultivating, he didn't intend to avoid Xian Yanqing. In fact, even if he did, Xian Yanqing would have guessed something. After all, he and Xian Yanqing had known each other for a few years. Xian Yanqing was very clear about the grade of his bloodline. Now that his bloodline had upgraded, Xian Yanqing must have been wondering about it. "My first bloodline has an ability to devour the blood essence of humans and beasts to upgrade its grade," Lu Ming said without hiding anything. However, he didn't mention the name of his first bloodline. It was not that he didn't trust Xian Yanqing. On the contrary, he trusted Xian Yanqing very much. However, this matter was too serious. If something were to happen, not only him, but Xian Yanqing would be in danger too. "It has such a wonderful ability." "How wonderful!" Xian Yanqing's eyes flickered as she exclaimed. "I've only told you about it. I hope you won't tell anyone else. Otherwise, I'll be captured and used for research." Lu Ming said. "You've only told me." Chapter 677. "Of course, I didn't even tell my parents," Lu Ming said. "Hee, I'm the only one you told." Xian Yanqing's face revealed a bright smile. Her eyes were full of smiles as she said, "Then you'll have to listen to me obediently in the future. Otherwise, hee." Xian Yanqing revealed a pair of beautiful canine teeth as he chuckled, looking very pleased with himself. "Listen to you." "Sure." Lu Ming walked towards Xian Yanqing with a smile. "Really?" Xian Yanqing's eyes lit up. Whoosh! Lu Ming suddenly hugged Xian Yanqing by the waist and slapped Xian Yanqing's perky buttocks. He laughed and said, "Fake. How dare you threaten me? I'll spank you." Xian Yanqing was stunned for a moment. Then, her little face turned red. She bared her fangs and brandished her claws, shouting, "Lu Ming, how dare you hit me, hit me. I'm not done with you." "Tisk, it's not the first time." "Ah, it feels better than before. It's more flexible than before." Lu Ming muttered. Xian Yanqing screamed. Her true essence burst forth and escaped from Lu Ming's evil clutches. Her silver teeth creaked as she glared at Lu Ming. However, her face was red. Even the tips of her ears were red. It added a little girl's shyness and made her even more beautiful. "Little Qing, you're so beautiful," Lu Ming said subconsciously. Xian Yanqing blinked her big eyes and her face turned even redder. Suddenly, her face revealed a bright smile and said, "Humph, you have good taste. I'll let you go this time." "That works? Isn't that a little too fast?" Lu Ming was dumbfounded. "Nest, I can't stand it anymore. How dare you talk about love in front of me? Damn it, damn it. I must marry 3,000 concubines. I'll anger you to death, anger you to death." Dandan mumbled to himself as he ran to the front to observe the formation. Lu Ming was a little amused. Then, he looked at Xian Yanqing and said, "Little Qing, what about you? Are you hiding a lot of secrets from me?" "What secrets do I have?" Xian Yanqing blinked. "No. For example, I've met your elder sister before," Lu Ming asked. At the mention of this, Xian Yanqing's face immediately darkened and he didn't say anything. After a while, Xian Yanqing said, "It's not that I want to hide it from you, but now is not the time to tell you. Now is not the time to talk about it." "Why?" Lu Ming was puzzled. "It's very simple. It's because your cultivation is too weak. When you're strong enough, I'll naturally tell you." After Xian Yanqing finished speaking, he stopped talking. Strength? It seems that little Qing's background is really not that simple. Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat. Since Xian Yanqing didn't want to talk about it now, Lu Ming didn't continue to ask. Dandan carefully checked the inscriptions. After a while, he continued to guide Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing. The two continued to move forward. A few hours later, they finally passed through the layers of inscription formations and came to a mountain peak. On the mountain peak stood a palace. There should be no inscription formations in front of us. We can go straight to the peak, Dandan said. Although Dandan said so, Lu Ming still didn't dare to be careless. He carefully went to the peak. At the peak of the mountain, there stood a huge palace, which was golden and magnificent. In front of the palace, there was a huge square. The square was completely paved with white jade, which was extremely luxurious. As soon as Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing arrived at the peak, they stopped and looked very dignified. Frostblade Spirit, Old Monster Hongqi, and the Flood Dragon. Lu Ming stared at the white jade square with a surprised look. Frostblade Spirit, Old Monster Hongqi, and the Flood Dragon were all in the square. However, both sides seemed to be in trouble. On the white jade square, inscriptions were densely packed and black. They were like small black snakes swimming around, forming an inscription formation. Both Frostblade Spirit and Old Monster Hongqi were covered with inscriptions. The black inscriptions were constantly drilling into their bodies. The two of them stood in the square and were trying their best to resist. However, they couldn't move their bodies. On the other side of the square, the Flood Dragon was facing the same situation. It was now in its human form, standing in the square. There were also countless inscriptions drilling into its body from all directions. What a wonderful inscription formation! The inscriptions seemed to be alive. Lu Ming stared at the inscriptions on the white jade square with amazement in his eyes. On the square, Frostblade Spirit and the others also saw Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing. Surprise flashed through the eyes of Cold Blade Spirit Warrior and Red Old Monster. They did not expect that there would be other people who had made it here. Moreover, it was such a young man and woman. Judging from their cultivation, they were only Peak King warriors. In the next moment, ecstasy flashed in Frostblade Spirit's eyes. In the depths of his ecstasy, there was a trace of coldness as he yelled, "You too, you came at the right time. Right now, the Flood Dragon is trapped by the inscription formation and can't move. Go and kill it now." "No, little brother, you go alone. Leave that girl alive." Lu Ming sneered and said, "Senior, that Flood Dragon is too strong. I'm afraid I can't kill it." "Why can't you kill it? It's trapped and can't move. If it moves, it will be killed by the inscription formation. Why can't you kill it by attacking its vitals?" Frostblade Spirit yelled. "How about this? If the two of us attack the Flood Dragon together, we will have a better chance." Lu Ming pointed at Xian Yanqing and said, "No, that girl has other things to do. Hurry up and do it. Don't miss this opportunity." Frostblade Spirit yelled. "No, Senior. I still don't think I can do it alone." Lu Ming said. "Nonsense. Kid, you should know who I am. I'm Frostblade Spirit. Now, I order you to kill that Flood Dragon immediately. Now!" Frostblade Spirit's face darkened as he said in a commanding tone. Lu Ming sneered. This old guy finally couldn't hold back and showed his true colors. Lu Ming sneered and said, "Although I'm not talented, I still have some understanding of the inscription formation. This formation is very mysterious. If I attack the Flood Dragon, even if I can kill it, I will be trapped in the formation. With my cultivation, only death will await me if I fall into the formation. You want me to do it alone and leave my friend here so that she can help you break the formation around the square?" Frostblade Spirit's face became gloomier. He didn't expect that Lu Ming could see through his thoughts at such a young age. Yes, that was his plan. "Little guy, you're quite smart. But do you have any other choice now? If you don't do as I say, both of you will die when I come out." I advise you to do as I say. That girl can still live and you can die a quick death. Frostblade Spirit sneered and showed his ferocious face. Really? We don't have any other choice. How come? We can take a detour from the side, enter the main hall, obtain the treasures inside, and then swagger out. Isn't this a better choice? Lu Ming said with a smile. Junior, how dare you? If you dare, I swear I'll make you wish you were dead. Chapter 678. Lu Ming sneered. This Han Dao spirit warrior was really shameless. When he was fighting with the flood dragon, he didn't care about the lives of others. He let others block the flood dragon for him while he ran away. In fact, with the strength of the Ice Blade Spirit Warrior, if he risked his life, it would not be a problem for him to hold off the flood dragon for a while until old monster Hongqi and the others arrived. However, he would not do that. He would rather let others sacrifice their lives so that he could protect himself as much as possible. Now, he wanted to do the same thing again. He wanted Lu Ming to kill the flood dragon with his life. After killing the flood dragon, he would ask Xian Yanqing to attack the formation base. Did he think others were fools? If they didn't agree, he would threaten them. Was the third tier of the spiritual sea realm that great? Old man, I have a shortcoming. I hate it when people threaten me. The more they threaten me, the more I will go against them. As I said before, I happen to know some inscriptions. This formation has been engraved for a long time, so its power has decreased greatly. The energy of the spirit crystals in some places has been used up. It seems that I need to replenish some spirit crystals. Lu Ming said lightly. Little bastard, how dare you? The Han Dao spirit warrior's face was cold. Why wouldn't I dare? You are nothing in my eyes. Lu Ming curled his lips and flew to the edge of the square. There were some potholes on the edge of the square. That was the formation base. There were many supreme-grade spirit crystals inlaid on it. But some of the spirit crystals were broken and had lost their spirituality. There was no energy left. Lu Ming pointed at a pothole and moved his finger. The useless spirit crystals in the pothole flew out. A perfect supreme-grade spirit crystal appeared in Lu Ming's hand. He waved his hand, and the supreme-grade spirit crystal was inlaid into the pothole. The inscriptions around the pothole brightened a little. Stop it! Stop it! The Han Dao spirit warrior roared. Stop? Sure, kneel down and beg me. Lu Ming turned his head and smiled at the Frost Saber spirit cultivator. Kneel down and beg you? Little bastard, who do you think you are? How dare you ask me to kneel down and beg you? The Han Dao spirit warrior was stunned for a moment and then roared. Forget it if you don't want to kneel. Lu Ming's fingers kept moving. He took out the useless supreme spiritual crystals one by one and put in the intact supreme spiritual crystals. He was very fast. Soon, Lu Ming had put in hundreds of supreme spiritual crystals. The inscriptions on the formation grew brighter and brighter, and its power grew stronger and stronger. Little bastard, if I don't kill you, I swear I'm not human. The Frostblade Spirit Master's killing intent was bone-chilling. He hated Lu Ming to the bone. Roar! At this moment, the flood dragon let out an earth-shattering roar and stepped toward the edge of the square. As soon as it moved, the inscription formation began to operate crazily. Countless inscriptions seemed to have come to life and turned into swords and sabers that slashed at the flood dragon. The flood dragon roared and a halberd appeared in his hand. He swung it around to block the attacks from all directions. Clearly, the flood dragon was very decisive. It knew that if it continued, the situation would become more and more disadvantageous for it. It wanted to charge out of the array with its life on the line. Boom! Boom! The sabers and swords formed by the inscription formation were extremely powerful and there seemed to be no end to them. They kept slashing at the flood dragon. Puff! Even though the flood dragon's defense was amazing, it was still cut open by the sharp swords and blood flowed out. However, the flood dragon ignored it and rushed out crazily. Every time it took a step, the white jade ground would rumble. Countless inscriptions covered the flood dragon and eventually turned into flames, wrapping the flood dragon in them. Roar! With a shocking roar, the flood dragon turned into its original form, which was only 12 meters long. Its body shot out rays of blue divine light and the halberd slashed horizontally. Even so, every time the flood dragon stepped a meter forward, there would be an additional wound on its body. At the same time, it had to face the burning flames. No wonder it's a flood dragon. What a strong physical body! Lu Ming exclaimed. In the face of such an attack, a human martial artist might not be able to withstand it. However, the flood dragon withstood it and kept rushing out. It was getting closer and closer to the outside of the formation. Damn it! Cold Saber Spirit Master and Old Monster Hong Chi were anxious. If the flood dragon went out first, the treasures in the hall would fall into its hands. Shao Qing, let's go into the hall first. Lu Ming's face also changed. If the flood dragon came out, they would not be its match. The two of them rushed along the side of the square and were about to rush to the hall. Stop! The flood dragon roared and its 2 dragon horns emitted a bright light. 2 rays of blue divine light, like 2 extremely sharp swords, shot through the inscription formation and shot toward Lu Ming and Old Monster Hong Chi. Lu Ming blocked it with the infinite dragon spear. The huge force made Lu Ming and Xie Nianqing retreat rapidly. Buzz! The infinite dragon spear kept vibrating in his hand. Fortunately, it was a level 6 upper spiritual weapon. If it were a level 5 spiritual weapon, it would have been shattered. The flood dragon roared and rushed out crazily without caring about its injuries. Its speed was greatly increased. In just a few breaths, the flood dragon rushed out of the inscription formation, but in exchange, it was covered with wounds. There were at least dozens of wounds on the flood dragon's body. Its dragon scales were torn and its flesh was badly mutilated. Some of the wounds exposed its snow-white bones. Even the bones were cut open. However, the flood dragon's body was too strong and its vitality was terrifying. With such serious injuries, its breath was a little weak, but it did not fall down. It glanced at Lu Ming and Xie Nianqing, but did not attack. Instead, it rushed into the hall. This flood dragon is in such a hurry to rush to the hall. There must be great treasures inside. Let's go in and have a look. Lu Ming said to Xie Nianqing. Xie Nianqing also nodded. Although the flood dragon was powerful, it was too injured to maintain its peak combat strength. If the flood dragon attacked them, the two of them were confident to escape together. That was why they dared to follow it. The two of them followed the flood dragon and rushed into the hall. Damn it, little bastard! The Frostblade spiritual master roared. They did not dare to rush in like the flood dragon. They did not have a strong body like the flood dragon. Whoosh! Whoosh! Lu Ming, Xie Nianqing and the flood dragon rushed into the hall one after another. The hall was very spacious. As soon as they rushed in, Lu Ming felt a huge pressure. Even his 9 dragons bloodline was agitated. Lu Ming's spine was filled with red light. Lu Ming looked at the center of the hall in shock. There was a mass of blood floating there. On the surface of the blood, there were small true dragons swimming constantly. A huge pressure spread out. This pressure was like the pressure of the ancestor of all beasts and the king of all kings. It was terrifying and could subdue everything. A true dragon, the blood of a true dragon. Before Lu Ming spoke, Dandan on his shoulder shouted first. The blood of a true dragon. Yes, this mass of blood was the blood of a true dragon. Lu Ming and Xie Nianqing were shocked. They never expected that there would be a mass of blood of a true dragon in the Rainbow Spiritual Master's palace. Moreover, this mass of blood seemed to have just flowed out of a true dragon and had spirituality. Chapter 679. What was a true dragon? It was a supreme divine beast. It had been extinct in the eastern wilderness for many years. Lu Ming had once obtained a true dragon's phalanx. However, the phalanx's spirituality had almost completely dissipated after so many years. There was not much essence left. However, this true dragon's blood had completely preserved its spirituality and essence. Its value was incomparable. It was no wonder that the flood dragon was willing to risk its life to rush into the palace. The temptation of a real dragon's blood was too strong for a flood dragon. If a flood dragon swallowed the blood, it would undergo a shocking transformation. Its future potential was limitless. Edited by Lifer, Fingerfox. It seemed that the flood dragon was after this true dragon's blood when the sea beasts attacked the island. He wondered how the flood dragon knew that there was true dragon's blood on the Rainbow Island. I want to eat it. I want to eat this true dragon's blood. Dandan's eyes widened as it screamed. It ran toward the true dragon's blood with its 2 legs. At this moment, Lu Ming's 9 dragons bloodline also appeared. He let out a loud roar, feeling an incomparable desire. Roar! The flood dragon roared and its body grew rapidly. It whipped its tail on Dandan's body and sent Dandan flying. Ah! You little worm! How dare you whip me! I'm not done with you! Dandan screamed and slammed into the wall of the main hall, creating a dent in the wall and embedding herself in it. Little worm, you're dead. You're dead. Ouch! My old waist. Dandan's cursing voice could be heard. Lu Ming was relieved. He knew that the flood dragon's defense was amazing. He would not be hurt so easily. Roar! After sending Dandan flying, the flood dragon pounced on the true dragon's blood. Stop it! Lu Ming strode forward, his long spear expanding and attacking the flood dragon. Heavenly Demon Force Field. Xian Yanqing pressed her hand and the Heavenly Demon Force Field exploded, enveloping the flood dragon. Scram! A loud roar came from the flood dragon's mouth as a gigantic halberd flew out and collided with Lu Ming's gigantic spear chi, destroying Lu Ming's spear chi in one fell swoop. Immediately after, the flood dragon's gigantic body shook violently. Xian Yanqing's complexion changed and he was forced to retreat. The flood dragon was really too strong. Although its level was only at the early stage of the 2nd layer of the spiritual sea realm, it could suppress the peak of the 3rd layer of the spiritual sea realm, Frostblade Spirit Practitioner, and battle with 3 powerful 3rd layer spiritual sea realm experts. Even that old monster Lu Xian might have been killed by the flood dragon. Although the flood dragon was heavily injured and its battle prowess was greatly reduced, its strength was definitely not weaker than the peak of the 2nd layer of the spiritual ocean tier. It was not something that Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing could rival. After pushing back Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing, the flood dragon flew forward, opened its mouth wide, and swallowed the dragon blood in one gulp. Roar! After swallowing the dragon blood, the flood dragon let out an excited roar that shook the sky. A layer of bloody light spread out from the flood dragon's body, and the injuries on its body began to heal at a visible speed. The dragon blood's effect was indeed amazing, especially for the flood dragon. It took effect so quickly. Not only that, but the flood dragon's aura was also rising rapidly. Go, let's get out of here quickly. Lu Ming's expression was solemn. Since they could not get the true dragon blood, they had to leave quickly. If they waited until the flood dragon's injuries were healed, it would be too late for them to leave. Bang! Dandan flew out from the wall and landed on Lu Ming's shoulder, still cursing. Who is it? Who are you? Get out, get out! At this moment, the flood dragon suddenly roared crazily. Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing were a little stunned. Was this directed at them? But it didn't look like it. Lu Ming, look, the flood dragon's eyes are not right. Xian Yanqing said. Lu Ming looked at the flood dragon's eyes and saw that in addition to excitement and ecstasy, there was also fear and horror in the flood dragon's eyes. Get out, get out, get out of my body! The flood dragon roared, and its huge body rolled in the hull. Ha ha ha, I've waited for 800 years and finally a flood dragon has appeared, You're asking me to get out? How is that possible? Lend your body to this old man. An old voice came out from the flood dragon's body. Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing were extremely shocked. What was going on? It's fake, you deliberately left clues outside and left this cloud of true dragon blood. It's all fake. The flood dragon roared crazily. Ha ha ha, I didn't wait for 800 years in vain. I will finally return to the world. The old voice laughed loudly once again. A layer of blood mist spread out from the flood dragon's head, which looked very strange. Seven-colored spiritual master, that's the seven-colored spiritual master. Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat as he thought of a possibility. But how was that possible? The seven-colored spiritual master was only in the spirit embryo realm, so how could he have survived until now? And from the looks of it, he was going to take over the flood dragon's body. Good move, good move. That seven-colored spiritual master is a seventh-level true inscription refiner. He fused his consciousness into the fire of consciousness and then used the blood of a true dragon to seal the fire of consciousness. That's how he could survive for 800 years. As long as the flood dragon swallows the dragon blood, when the dragon blood flows through the flood dragon's body, he will be able to destroy the flood dragon's soul and take over its body. Dandan's eyes flashed as it spoke. Ha, I didn't expect a little turtle to have some knowledge. The old voice came out. Get out, get out. The flood dragon kept shouting. What are you shouting for? It's your honor to have your body used by me. In the future, I will make your name resound in the world. The old voice sneered. Kill me now. As long as you kill me, it's useless for this old man to take over my body. I'd rather die than let my body become a puppet. The flood dragon suddenly looked at Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing. Juniors, how dare you ruin my plan. I will make sure you die without a burial ground. The seven-colored spiritual master shouted coldly. Hurry up, I can't hold on any longer. If this old man completely takes over my body, he will definitely kill you to silence you. He won't let this secret be known by others. The flood dragon roared. His eyes kept flashing and his speech was no longer smooth. He seemed to be unable to hold on any longer. His soul was about to be destroyed. The soul of a demonic beast was originally weaker than that of a human. Lu Ming, let's attack. This flood dragon is right. If the seven-colored spiritual master succeeds, he will definitely not let us go. Xian Yanqing said. All right, let's do it. Lu Ming's gaze was resolute. He made up his mind and prepared to attack. Roar! The flood dragon let out a shocking roar. It actually stretched out a sharp claw and clawed at its own chest. What are you doing? The seven-colored spiritual master roared. He seemed to be fighting with the flood dragon for control of his body, causing the claw to weaken. However, the scales on the flood dragon's chest were still scratched off and blood flowed out. Attack here. This is the vital point. Chapter 680. Attack! Lu Ming roared as he stepped forward and stabbed his spear at the flood dragon's vital point. Don't even think about it. Now, die! A purple figure appeared on top of the flood dragon's head. This figure was completely condensed from the spiritual fire. The purple spiritual fire represented a level 7 inscription master. It looked like an old man, but his face was extremely gloomy. With a wave of his hand, inscriptions flew out. Buzz! At that instant, lines of inscriptions were emitted from the palace, emitting a brilliant glow. Whoosh! A battle sword flew out and slashed at Lu Ming's spear. Lu Ming's body shook and he quickly retreated. Countless inscriptions shone in the hall, enveloping Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing. The seven-colored Taoist had long inscribed an inscription array in the hall. He seemed to have prepared to kill anyone who entered the hall 800 years ago. Die! The seven-colored Taoist shouted coldly. He waved his hands and countless inscriptions flew out. In the hall, the inscriptions shone brighter. Black inscriptions wriggled like small snakes. Sky Demon Force Field. Xian Yanqing used the Sky Demon Force Field to envelop himself and Lu Ming. He used the Sky Demon Force Field to resist the inscription array around them. Sure enough, under the Sky Demon Force Field, the inscriptions slowed down. Let's retreat. Since they couldn't kill him, they could only retreat. You want to leave? I say, no one can leave today. The seven-colored Taoist sneered. He waved his hands and the inscriptions around him became even more terrifying. They formed a battle sword and slashed at Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing. These arrays had been around for 800 years, but they were still as powerful as ever. Although the two tried their best to resist, they were still completely suppressed. They were surrounded by danger and were in extreme danger. Damn it, do you really think I'm a decoration? Watch me. Dandan opened its mouth and spat out 3 jade tokens. It kept one for itself and the other 2 flew towards Xian Yanqing and Lu Ming. What is this? Lu Ming asked. The shadow-shifting talisman can move anywhere. Even in this inscription formation, you can come and go freely. It took me a lot of effort to refine this talisman. Crush it quickly and kill that flood dragon. Dandan shouted. In this situation, he could only trust Dandan. Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing received the jade talismans and crushed them. Immediately, a curtain of light enveloped Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing. Dandan also crushed a piece, and a similar light screen enveloped him. Whoosh! Dandan dashed out like a phantom. The inscriptions had no effect on it. How wonderful! Lu Ming's heart stirred and he dashed out as well. True enough, when his figure passed by, it was like a phantom. Those inscriptions actually passed through his body and did not have any effect at all. Shadow-shifting talisman, how did you get the shadow-shifting talisman? This ancient talisman has been lost for countless years. How did you get it? The seven-colored Taoist shouted in disbelief. Who am I? During this period, I desperately refined a few pieces. I wanted to save them for some dangerous places, but I didn't expect to use them now. It's your honor to see my shadow-shifting talisman. Dandan laughed proudly. Kill! Lu Ming was too lazy to talk nonsense. He stabbed his spear toward the flood dragon. The flood dragon did not resist at all. It faced Lu Ming with its chest and let him kill it. Damn it! The seven-colored Taoist roared again and again, desperately controlling the flood dragon's body to attack. Don't even think about it. The flood dragon was obviously not completely occupied by the seven-colored Taoist and was desperately trying to control its body. Xian Yanqing walked over and used the heavenly demon force field to shroud the flood dragon's body and help to imprison it. Poochie! Lu Ming's long spear pierced the flood dragon's chest. Here, the scales had already been clawed off by the flood dragon, so its defense was greatly reduced. The incomparably sharp spearlight easily pierced through the flood dragon's muscles and into its heart. No! The seven-colored Taoist roared. Ha, old monster, you want to take my body? Dream on! The flood dragon laughed crazily. Boom! Lu Ming's long spear shook and a burst of true essence surged into it, smashing the flood dragon's heart into pieces. Whoosh! Whoosh! At the same time, more than a dozen battle swords formed by the inscription array slashed toward Lu Ming. Lu Ming pulled out his long spear and retreated quickly. With a bang, the flood dragon's body fell heavily to the ground. Old monster, you've been plotting for 800 years and you've failed in the end. The flood dragon laughed heartily. Slowly, its voice lowered and its life force dissipated. Damn it, you're all going to die today. The seven-colored Taoist roared crazily. Before he died, he had set up a trap with a ball of true dragon blood and left clues outside in order to attract a flood dragon and then occupy its body. With the true dragon blood as a medium, he was confident that he could succeed. The lifespan of monsters was much longer than that of humans, especially for creatures like the flood dragon. With a long lifespan, the seven-colored Taoist could explore a higher realm. Unfortunately, the flood dragon was dead and it was useless for him to occupy it. Refine, refine, refine. Hoo-hoo, a layer of purple flames suddenly appeared on the flood dragon's body. The purple flames wrapped around the flood dragon and burned it crazily. As it burned, the flood dragon's body shriveled and the purple flames became stronger and stronger. In the end, the purple flames gathered in the air and formed a human figure. It was the seven-colored Taoist. Retreat. For some unknown reason, Lu Ming suddenly had a bad premonition in his heart. He pulled Xian Yanqing and retreated hurriedly. Very soon, they left the main hall. You want to leave? Without the flood dragon, kid, your body is not bad. Let me use it. The seven-colored Taoist smiled sinisterly. The purple flames turned into a stream of light and flew towards Lu Ming. Fast, too fast. It crossed the hall in an instant. It was several times faster than Lu Ming and the others. It was really like a stream of light. Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing had just retreated to the entrance of the hall when the purple flames caught up with them. They shot directly towards Lu Ming's forehead and disappeared into Lu Ming's forehead. Not good, he wants to seize Lu Ming's body and destroy Lu Ming's soul. Xian Yanqing's expression changed drastically. His eyes were filled with worry. It's over, it's over. Little beauty, Lu Ming is finished. Your little lover is finished. Dandan shouted. What should we do? What should we do? Is there any way to save him? Dandan, aren't you an expert? Quickly think of a way. Xian Yanqing was extremely anxious. He was like an ant on a hot pan. His eyes were misty and he almost shed tears. At this moment, Lu Ming's forehead was covered with a layer of purple light. He sat cross-legged and seemed to be resisting with all his strength. There is a way, but I don't know if you're willing. Dandan touched its chin with one of its front paws. What way? Tell me, I'm definitely willing. Xian Yanqing said anxiously. Is that so? All right, I know a way. I want you and Lu Ming to practice the dual cultivation technique. This way, your soul can be transferred to Lu Ming's side and help him fight against the seven-colored Taoist. This way, your chances of winning will be much higher. Chapter 681. What? Dual cultivation? Xian Yanqing was stunned, and then his face turned red. What? You don't want to? Then forget it. Let's run away quickly. Lu Ming's body will definitely be taken by that old man. Sigh. Lu Ming sighed. Xian Yanqing bit his lips and his face turned red. In the end, he gritted his teeth and said, Okay, I agree. You can leave. I leave? No need. You guys start. I'll watch here and help you guard. Dandan said, his eyes rolling. What about the cultivation method? Xian Yanqing said. Cultivation method? What cultivation method? Dandan answered subconsciously. That dual cultivation method. After saying that, Xian Yanqing's eyes flashed. He couldn't help but take a closer look at Dandan. He saw that Dandan's eyes were rolling and his mouth was grinning. He looked like he wanted to laugh but was holding back. Dandan, are you lying to me? You're lying to me, right? Xian Yanqing stared. Ha ha ha, little beauty, you saw through me. I just wanted to see if you care about Lu Ming. I didn't expect that I would see through you. Dandan finally couldn't hold back and laughed. You cheap turtle, I'm going to eat you. Xian Yanqing's face was red. He bared his teeth and rushed over to grab Dandan. He wanted to bite him. Then he looked at Lu Ming with some worry and said, Is Lu Ming really okay? Don't worry. That old man actually dared to have designs on Lu Ming. He's simply courting death. Moreover, Lu Ming kid can obtain a great fortune. This kid is so lucky that even I am a little envious. Dandan said with a relaxed face. Are you really okay? Xie Nianqing asked. Of course it's fine, it's definitely fine. Dandan said confidently. Then, it saw Xie Nianqing gritting his teeth and glaring at it fiercely. Did he just get tricked by Dandan? Xie Nianqing's heartbeat quickened and her face flushed red. She wished she could find a hole to crawl into when she thought about how she had almost dual cultivated with Lu Ming. I wonder if that guy heard it. I don't think he heard it. At the thought that Lu Ming might have heard it, Xie Nianqing wished he could roast Dandan. Hey, what are you doing? Why are you looking at me like that? I'm doing this for your own good, you know. You'll have to do it sooner or later anyway, so why don't you do it early? Young people like to drag things out. I'm getting anxious. Dandan shouted. Who's going to do that kind of thing with that guy? A ball of flame appeared in Xie Nianqing's hand and enveloped Dandan. Nest, it's killing someone. No, it's killing a turtle. Help! Dandan shouted and retracted its head into the turtle shell. The turtle shell glowed and blocked the flames. At this moment, a great battle was going on in Lu Ming's Sea of Consciousness. How is this possible? Geocentric flowing flame. Your spiritual fire is ignited by the geocentric flowing flame. The seven-colored Taoist screamed in horror. At this moment, the seven-colored Taoist spiritual fire was wrapped in a ball of yellow flames. Just now, when the seven-colored Taoist came in, he wanted to extinguish Lu Ming's spiritual fire and replace it. But he had never dreamed that the essence of Lu Ming's spiritual fire was the geocentric flowing flame. The geocentric flowing flame was an extremely powerful flame. It was one of the top flames in the world. Not only did the seven-colored Taoist fail to extinguish Lu Ming's spiritual fire, but he was also surrounded by Lu Ming's spiritual fire. Damn it, damn it! The seven-colored Taoist shouted, and his purple spiritual fire turned into a human form. He waved his hands, and a purple battle sword appeared, trying to break through the encirclement of Lu Ming's spiritual fire. Hoo! Lu Ming's spiritual fire suddenly changed and turned into a huge nether god. It held a long spear and stabbed at the seven-colored Taoist. This was the nether god transformed by the nether god visualization. Lu Ming was using the nether god visualization at this moment. Bang! The seven-colored Taoist's battle sword was defeated, but the long spear didn't stop and stabbed at the seven-colored Taoist's body. The seven-colored Taoist screamed, and his body scattered, turning into a purple flame that floated back and then reformed. Spiritual fire cultivation technique. You actually mastered the spiritual fire cultivation technique. The seven-colored Taoist screamed hysterically, and his voice was filled with endless fear. It seemed that he was even more terrified than when he learned about the geocentric flowing flame. Die! The nether god gave off a terrifying aura as he stepped forward and stabbed with his spear. Run! The seven-colored Taoist turned into a streak of light and ran. Where do you think you're going in my spiritual sea? The next moment, the nether god appeared in front of the seven-colored Taoist and stabbed with his spear. With a poof, the seven-colored Taoist was scattered again and turned into a ball of flame. In Lu Ming's Sea of Consciousness, he was the master of this place and had complete control over it. How could the seven-colored sage escape? This time, the seven-colored Taoist took a long time to reform the scattered flames. Spare me, young hero, spare me. The seven-colored Taoist started to beg for mercy. You wanted to kill me, and now you want me to spare you? Do you think that's possible? Lu Ming sneered. Young hero, as long as you spare me, I can teach you how to refine pills and inscribe arrays. I can teach you all my experience. The seven-colored Taoist yelled. Hee, I don't feel at ease facing an old monster like you. I'm more at ease facing a dead person. Lu Ming wasn't moved at all and stabbed with his spear. Pang! The flames were scattered again. Then, Lu Ming turned into a ball of flame again and surrounded the seven-colored Taoist's purple flames. The seven-colored Taoist screamed. His soul and consciousness were being burned by the geocentric flowing flame and slowly dissipated. No matter how he begged or cursed, Lu Ming wasn't moved. A moment later, the seven-colored Taoist's voice completely disappeared. His consciousness had been completely refined by Lu Ming, and only a ball of pure spiritual fire was left. Hoo! At this moment, the seven-colored Taoist's spiritual fire was being refined, and wisps of it floated towards Lu Ming's spiritual lamp. Lu Ming originally only lit 8 yellow spiritual lamps, but now, the first 8 continued to burn, and the 9th lamp suddenly emitted a wisp of flame. Although it was only a wisp of flame, it meant that Lu Ming had lit the 9th lamp. A level 3 inscription master had 9 lamps. He was only 1 lamp away from perfection. Moreover, as the geocentric flowing flame continued to refine the seven-colored Taoist's spiritual fire, the flame of the 9th spiritual lamp began to grow brighter and brighter. It was 108,000 times faster than when he was cultivating. Lu Ming was overjoyed and excited. He could actually refine the seven-colored Taoist's spiritual fire for his own use and improve his spiritual fire. Chapter 682. Moreover, as the seven-colored Taoist's spiritual fire was refined and fused into his own spiritual fire, it brought along some scattered fragments. Those were fragments of the seven-colored Taoist's experience regarding inscription, alchemy, and inscription arrays. This was the seven-colored Taoist's lifetime experience of cultivating the Tao of inscription. It was slowly fused into Lu Ming's spiritual fire and was grasped by Lu Ming. Lu Ming simply wanted to look up to the sky and laugh. This was an opportunity, a supreme opportunity. After all, Lu Ming had only been cultivating the path of inscription for a short period of time. Although his mental fire was perfect at every level, he was still inexperienced. Although he had mastered millions of level 1, level 2, and level 3 inscriptions that Dandan had given him, he didn't know how to combine them and how to use them. This was something that had to be slowly explored. This was experience. But now, he had refined the seven-colored Taoist's spiritual fire and fused with his experience. Although these experiences were still scattered, as long as Lu Ming refined more of the seven-colored Taoist's spiritual fire, he would definitely gain more and more experience. His knowledge of the Tao of inscription would definitely advance by leaps and bounds. Although the true dragon's blood had been burned and dried up by the seven-colored Taoist, it was enough to obtain such an opportunity. To Lu Ming, it was even more precious than a ball of true dragon's blood. At this moment, Lu Ming opened his eyes. In the sea of consciousness, refining the mental fire was not something that could be done in a short period of time. It was constantly being refined. Lu Ming's mental fire was constantly improving. Kid, you've struck it big this time, right? Seeing Lu Ming open his eyes, Dandan laughed. Yes, I've indeed struck it big. Lu Ming smiled slightly. Xian Yanqing's face was still a little red. She blinked her big eyes and looked at Lu Ming, then looked in other directions as if she didn't dare to look at Lu Ming. Hey, little Qing, we seem to have other things to do just now. Why don't we continue now? Lu Ming looked at Xian Yanqing with a smile and said. Xian Yanqing's face suddenly turned red. She knew that Lu Ming must have heard everything that had happened before. Continue, my ass. A big pervert with a perverted tortoise. You're really jackals of the same tribe. Xian Yanqing gritted her teeth and blushed. She turned her head and didn't look at Lu Ming. Kid, I've been generous this time, right? Quickly give me some spiritual herbs as a reward. Dandan shouted. Dandan Lin said. Dandan Taoist, Dandan was overjoyed and swallowed them all. Dandan was dawn. At the sight of this, Xian Yanqing gritted her silver teeth and her eyes widened to the size of copper bells. There was a raging fire in her eyes as she pounced on Lu Ming with bared fangs and brandished claws. Let's see if there are any other treasures in the main hall. Lu Ming quickly changed the topic and dashed into the main hall in a flash. After walking around the hall, he found that there was nothing there. It was completely empty. Where were the treasures left behind by the seven-colored Taoist? Where was the storage ring? Why was there nothing? Lu Ming was a little depressed. If he had known, he would have interrogated the seven-colored Taoist and made him tell him where the treasures were hidden before killing him. He walked around and returned to the side of the flood dragon's body. It was a pity that the blood and essence of the flood dragon's body had been burned by the seven-colored Taoist. Otherwise, the flood dragon's blood essence would be a great supplement. He could even refine the blood of a true dragon. This flood dragon's body is full of treasures. Keep it. Lu Ming waved his hand and put the flood dragon's body into a storage ring. Xian Yanqing angrily followed beside Lu Ming. Little Qing, let's go out. Lu Ming said with a smile. Humph. Xian Yanqing snorted coldly. He ignored Lu Ming and walked out. Lu Ming smiled and followed her out. When they arrived at the edge of the square, they found that the two were still trapped there. Little bastard, stop right there. Where's the flood dragon? What's wrong? What treasures did you get? Hand them over. The moment he saw Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing, the Frostblade spirit shouted. Idiot, you're really an idiot. I think you've lived for so long in vain. In this situation, instead of kneeling and begging me, you're actually threatening me. Lu Ming shook his head and said contemptuously. Little bastard, what did you say? The Frostblade spirit shouted angrily. Lu Ming shook his head. He could not be bothered to talk nonsense. He exchanged thousands of spirit crystals around the array to increase the power of the array. You two, enjoy yourselves here. Lu Ming waved his hand and swaggered away with Xian Yanqing. Behind them, only the roars of the Frostblade spirit and old monster Hongqi could be heard. Dandan, that form-shifting talisman of yours is quite useful. Make a few more when you're free. On the way, Lu Ming looked at Dandan expectantly. Okay, give me the materials. Form connecting jade. Dandan stretched out a claw. Form connecting jade? What form connecting jade? Lu Ming was stunned. Nonsense, of course it's the materials. Without form connecting jade, how can I make a talisman? I don't think you have it either. I found the previous few when I saw you cleaning other people's storage rings. That's why I made a few form-shifting talismans. Dandan curled its lips. Lu Ming remembered that Dandan had indeed coaxed and pestered him once and took away a piece of jade from him. Initially, he had thought that it was an ordinary jade. He did not expect it to be a form-forming jade. Lu Ming, let me tell you, form-connecting jade is very rare. With my current strength, it can only be used in a 6th-level inscription array. The array set by the seven-colored spiritual master is only as powerful as a 6th-level inscription array after so many years. That's why it can be used. So, don't think you can use form-shifting talismans to walk in various arrays. It's unrealistic. Dandan said mercilessly. Lu Ming was depressed. He did have the idea to let Dandan make a pile of form-shifting talismans. Then he wouldn't be afraid of any arrays in the future. It seemed that there was no such thing as a free lunch in the world. The two of them and the tortoise followed the original path and got out of the area that was full of inscription formations without any danger. Let's go to other places to search for spiritual herbs. Lu Ming said. Next, they chose another direction and went to look for spiritual herbs. Although the Rainbow Island was big, it was still limited. This place had already been searched. In the next 3 days, although the two of them had some gains, they didn't gain much. However, Lu Ming's spiritual fire had undergone earth-shattering changes. His spirit fire was increasing at a crazy rate with every passing moment. In just 3 days, not only did he ignite 10 spiritual lamps at the 3rd level, but he also stepped into the range of a 4th-level inscriptionist. Now, he had already ignited 8 green spiritual lamps. A 4th-level inscriptionist and 8 green spiritual lamps. In just 3 days, Lu Ming's spiritual fire had increased by a whole realm.